Queen Livra of the Viren Empire was known for her strength. Her people feared her, and her enemies trembled at her name. Ruling the vast and hostile planet of Viora, she had conquered many worlds, bringing them under her control with a single look. She had everything: power, wealth, and the respect of all who crossed her path. But there was something missing. Livra had spent centuries building her empire, keeping her emotions buried beneath layers of steel and stone. She was the queen. She had no time for weakness, no room for feeling. Yet deep down, a part of her longed for something more. It was during a routine visit to a nearby colony that things began to change. She had traveled to the human outpost as part of a diplomatic mission, a simple task that she had done countless times. The humans were no match for her or her people, but their technology was useful, and their cooperation helped keep the peace. She had little interest in their lives, but she needed them as allies. The day was over, and she was about to return to her ship when she saw him. A Humana soldier named Jay stood among the other colonists. He wasn't tall or particularly strong, not by Vioran standards, but there was something about him that caught her attention. He stood a little apart from the others, his eyes scanning the horizon as if waiting for something or someone. Livra was used to seeing humans as weak, insignificant creatures. They were small and fragile, and their technology could barely match the might of her empire. But this man, he was different. There was a quiet confidence about him, a strength in the way he held himself, that intrigued her. As their eyes met, something inside her shifted. It wasn't the physical attraction that most would expect. It was something deeper, something she couldn't quite explain. There was an energy between them, a pull she had never felt before. She was used to being in control, used to seeing others bend to her will, but this man's gaze was steady, unwavering. It wasn't the first time she had seen a human. Livra had encountered countless humans in her travels, but none had left such an impression on her. This feeling, this strange connection, was new. She didn't know what to make of it. She had to know more. The next few days were spent in meetings with the human leaders. Livra was uninterested in most of their discussions, but her mind kept drifting back to Jace. She found herself asking about him, learning more about this soldier who had caught her attention. It was clear that he wasn't a leader or a politician, but there was something captivating about him, something that stirred something inside her, that she had long buried. By the time the diplomatic talks had ended, Livra found herself with an unexpected request. She ordered Jace to come to her chambers. It wasn't unusual for her to request the presence of those she deemed useful, but there was something different about this. She didn't know what she expected, but her curiosity was impossible to ignore. Jock arrived promptly, standing tall and unwavering in front of her. He didn't bow, didn't show fear, he simply stood there, meeting her gaze with the same quiet strength that had caught her attention from the beginning. Livra found herself oddly mesmerized by his presence. "I have a request," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I want to understand your people better. You will stay here for a time to help me learn more about your ways? You will not be harmed. Your cooperation is all I ask." Jace hesitated for a moment, as though considering the offer. Livra could see the uncertainty in his eyes, but there was also a hint of curiosity there. She knew he wouldn't refuse. He was loyal to his people, but he wasn't foolish. Refusing the Queen of the Viren Empire was never an option. "I will stay," he finally said. "But I want to know why you chose me." Livra wasn't sure how to answer. She had never felt the need to explain herself before. She was a queen, and others simply obeyed. But something about Jace made her want to share more than she usually would. "You were different," she said simply, "and I need to understand why." Days passed, and their meetings became more frequent.
At first,
They discussed the political landscape of the galaxy, strengths and weaknesses of each species, and the future of their alliance. But gradually, the conversations began to change. Livra found herself asking more personal questions, probing deeper into Jace's thoughts, his feelings, his past. She had spent so many years ruling, keeping everyone at a distance, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have a real connection with someone. Her people respected her, but no one truly knew her. She was the queen, untouchable, unreachable. But with Jace it was different. He didn't fear her. He didn't look at her like she was a god. He saw her as she was powerful, but lonely. And in his eyes, she could see that he was willing to meet her on equal ground. Despite their differences, Jace, on the other hand, found himself drawn to Livra in ways he couldn't explain. At first he had been wary of her power, her reputation, and the danger she represented. But now, as he spent more time with her, he saw a side of her that few ever did. He saw the vulnerability beneath the tough exterior. The loneliness she tried so hard to hide. Their conversations became more personal. They spoke of family, of love, of loss. Livra had never spoken of her past in such a way, but something about Jace made her want to share. For the first time in centuries, she felt like someone understood her, not just as the queen, but as the woman behind the crown. The pull between them grew stronger. Neither of them understood it, but neither could deny it. There was an undeniable connection that neither could ignore. Livra had never expected to find something like this, not in a human, and Jace had never imagined that he would come to care for an alien queen, let alone be so captivated by her presence. But as the days passed, the question lingered, what would they do with this connection? Neither was willing to let go, but neither knew what it meant for their future. Queen Livra stood at the balcony of her palace, staring out at the vast dark sky. Stars blinked above her like cold eyes, indifferent to the struggles of those below. Her fingers drummed lightly on the stone railing, a subtle sign of her inner tension. For years, she had ruled with an iron fist, keeping her emotions in check, hiding any weakness behind the mask of power. But ever since Jace had entered her life, things had begun to shift. The walls she had so carefully built around herself were slowly starting to crumble. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Her mind drifted back to the conversations they had shared. Jace had started as nothing more than a Tula means to learn more about the human race. But now she found herself eagerly awaiting their meetings, curious about his thoughts, his experiences, his life. He wasn't like the other humans she had met. He wasn't afraid of her, and that intrigued her the most. He didn't look at her as if she were a queen. He saw her as a person. And, for the first time in a long while, Livra found herself longing for that connection, that sense of equality. The sound of footsteps behind her pulled her from her thoughts. Without turning around, she spoke. Her voice calm, but carrying the weight of her growing uncertainty. "You're late," she said. Jace stepped closer, his movements quiet but steady. "I had some business to attend to," he replied. "I'm here now." Livra turned to face him, her eyes locking with his. There was something in his gaze, something that made her chest tighten, something she didn't understand. It was more than just admiration or respect. There was a connection between them, something invisible but strong. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you weren't a soldier?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. JC looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. "I've wondered. Yeah. But I think my life would still be the same in some ways. Fighting, surviving, trying to protect those I care about. It's who I am." Livra nodded, understanding more than he realized. "It's the same for me," she said quietly. "I've been queen for so long that I can't remember what it feels like to be anything else. It's all I know. But I think I've forgotten what it's like to be human." Jace raised an eyebrow, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. He had always known Livra as a leader, unyielding, a symbol of power. But in this moment, she was something else. She was just a person who, despite all her strength, felt a deep emptiness. "You're not the same as the others, Livra," Jace said, his voice gentle. "I can see that. You're not just a queen. It's more to you than that." For a moment, Livra's gaze faltered, and she looked away. She wasn't used to being seen like this. It unsettled her. It was easier when people feared her, when they bowed to her without question. But Jace didn't bow. He didn't fear her. He saw her for who she truly was, and that terrified her. "You're different." "Too," she said softly, her eyes finding his again. "Most humans are so fragile, but you're different. You've been through so much, and yet you're still here." strong. Jace felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He wasn't used to receiving compliments, especially from someone as powerful as Lyra, but there was something about her sincerity, her vulnerability, that made him feel like he mattered. "I've learned to survive," he said with a half smile. "But survival isn't always enough. Sometimes we need something more." Livra's heart skipped a beat at his words. She wasn't sure what he meant by them, but she felt a longing deep within her. She didn't want to admit it, didn't want to acknowledge how much she needed him, but the truth was undeniable. She felt alive when he was around, and for the first time in years she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. Days passed, and their meetings continued. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission had turned into something far more complicated. Livra found herself looking forward to their conversations, seeking him out whenever she could. She wanted to know more about him, his life, his dreams, his fears, and with every conversation, she found herself drawn deeper into his world. Too was beginning to see Livra in a new light. At first, he had seen her as nothing more than a queen, a ruler who demanded respect and fear. But now he saw the woman beneath the crown, the woman who was just as lost and confused as he was. She had been through so much, carried so much weight on her shoulders. She was powerful, yes, but she was also lonely. He began to realize that. He cared for her, more than he should. But he tried to push those feelings away. She was a queen, and he was just a soldier. They were worlds apart, both in status and in experience. But when she looked at him with those eyes that seemed to see right through him, he couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was more to their connection than he could understand. One evening, as they sat together in the royal gardens, Livra spoke again, her voice softer than usual. "Do you ever think about what happens after all this?" she asked, her gaze focused on the stars above. "After the empire is built, after the war is won, what comes next?" Jace thought for a moment before replying, "I don't know. I've always lived in the moment, always focused on surviving, on doing what's right. But I think maybe I'd like to find peace. For myself, for those I care about." Livra turned to him, her heart aching at his words. "Peace," she whispered. "That sounds nice." For the first time in a long while, Livra felt something stir within her. Feeling of hope, fragile but real. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't ready to let go of Jace. Not yet. As the days stretched on, Queen Livra found herself thinking about Jace more and more. What had started as a curiosity had transformed into an obsession. His presence filled her mind even when he wasn't around. Every conversation with him left her feeling lighter, more alive. And every moment without him felt like an eternity. She had always prided herself on being strong. Queen who didn't need anyone, but Jace was changing that. He was breaking down the walls she had carefully built around her heart. She didn't know how or why, but she couldn't stop herself from wanting more. One evening, as Lyra sat in her grand chambers, the weight of her crown feeling heavier than ever, she found herself reaching for the small communication device on her desk. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers hovering over the button. But she couldn't stop herself. She pressed it. A moment later, Jace's face appeared on the screen, his calm eyes meeting hers. "Your Majesty," he said, with a hint of a smile. Livra's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly pushed away the feeling. "Jace," she replied, her voice soft but steady, "I need to see you." There was a pause, and she could see the surprise in his eyes. "Now?" "Yes," she said, almost pleading. "I need you here. I can't explain why, but I do." Jace studied her for a moment, sensing the urgency in her voice. "I'll be there shortly." When Jace arrived, Livra was standing by the balcony again, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. Her posture was regal, but there was a vulnerability in the way she held herself that he had never seen before. It made her seem smaller, more fragile, and it made something inside him ache. "You're here," she said without turning around. "I'm here," Jace confirmed, stepping closer. "What's going on, Livra? You sounded—" He trailed off, not sure how to put his concern into words. Livra finally turned to face him, her gaze steady but her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "I've been thinking," "A lot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about you, about us." Jace felt a knot form in his stomach. He had been expecting this moment, but he wasn't sure how to handle it. They were from different worlds. She was a queen, powerful and untouchable, and he was just a soldier, a human. Their connection was dangerous, and they both knew it. Yet, here they were, standing in her palace, drawn to each other in a way neither could ignore. "What are we doing, Livra?" Jace asked, his voice low and full of uncertainty. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know I can't stop thinking about you. Every moment without you feels like an eternity. I've never felt this way before." She paused, taking a deep breath. "It scares me." Jace stepped closer, his heart pounding. He had always been able to keep his emotions in check, but Livra was different. She made him feel things he had never felt before, things that confused him, terrified him. "I don't know what's happening between us," he said, his voice strained. "But I can't deny it either. I feel it too. The pull, the connection." Livra took a step forward, her breath shallow. "Then why do we fight it?" she asked softly. Jace looked at her, his expression conflicted. "Because it's impossible. Because it's dangerous," she said, her voice steady but full of longing. "But I can't ignore what I feel. I don't want to." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken emotions. Of them could fully understand what was happening, but it was undeniable.
Oh.
There was a connection between them that neither could explain, but it was powerful and real. And in that moment, neither could ignore it any longer. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Livra found herself seeking Jace out more often, spending hours talking to him about everything and nothing. She found herself feeling things she hadn't felt in years, things like hope, excitement, and even fear. She had always been in control, but with Jace, she felt as though she was losing herself. The more time they spent together, the stronger the bond between them grew. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was something deeper. They shared a connection that went beyond words, a shared understanding of loneliness and the burdens of their lives. Livra had never met anyone who made her feel so seen, so understood. And Jace, though he tried to resist, found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. He tried to tell himself that it was just a temporary thing, that it was a result of their close proximity and the pressures of their respective roles. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. He cared about her, more than he should. One night, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the palace, Livra spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "Jace, I've been thinking about what you said about this being dangerous." Jace met her gaze, his heart beating faster. "What about it?" "I think you're right," she said slowly, "but I can't help myself. I don't want to let go of what we have, and I don't think I can. Not anymore." Jace's chest tightened at her words. He had known this was coming. He had known it would be hard to resist, but hearing her say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. "Livra, I don't care if it's dangerous," she interrupted, her voice firm. "I need you, and I won't let go." For a moment, there was silence between them. The world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them, standing on the edge of something they didn't fully understand but couldn't walk away from. "I won't let go either," Jace said quietly, his voice raw with emotion. "But what does this mean for us? For our future?" Livra's eyes softened, and for the first time she seemed uncertain, like a queen who wasn't sure how to rule her own heart. "I don't know, but I'm not ready to let go. Not yet." With those words, everything changed. The bond that had started as a spark was now a fire one neither of them could control. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also something neither of them could walk away from. The days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of excitement and fear. Queen Livra found herself unable to concentrate on her duties, her mind constantly drifting back to Jace. She knew that her feelings for him were growing stronger, deeper than she had ever expected. And yet every time she allowed herself to give in to that feeling, a wave of panic would rise in her chest. She had never been vulnerable. She had never allowed herself to care for anyone, not like this. She was the ruler of the Viren Empire, feared and respected by every species across the galaxy. She couldn't afford to be weak, couldn't afford to let anyone get too close. But Jace had changed that. His presence made her feel things she didn't understand, things that both frightened and excited her. Her thoughts were interrupted one evening as she sat in her chambers, her fingers tracing the edges of her crown. The weight of it had never felt so heavy. As the ruler of an empire, she was expected to lead with strength, to never show a sign of weakness. But lately, it was becoming harder and harder to maintain that mask. She had spent days avoiding him, telling herself that it was for the best, that it was too dangerous for them to be so close. She had even tried to focus on her empire, throwing herself into her work, hoping it would help push her feelings for Jace aside. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the pull between them. It was always there, lurking in the back of her mind. Finally, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to see him. When Jace arrived at her chambers, Livra was pacing, her mind racing. He had noticed the change in her, the way she had been avoiding him, the way her gaze had become distant whenever they spoke. He had felt the distance too, and it worried him. He wasn't sure what was happening between them, but he knew it was becoming more than just a passing connection. "Livra?" Jace said softly, his voice cutting through her thoughts. She stopped, pacing, and turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of frustration and fear. "Oh, Jace, I don't know what's happening to me. I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't know how to stop it." Jace stepped forward, concern deepening in his eyes. "You don't have to stop it. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I want to be with you," Livra admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But it's wrong. I'm the queen. I can't let myself be weak, and yet with you I feel vulnerable. I can't explain it, but I'm losing control." Jace reached out, gently placing a hand on her arm. "You're not losing control. You're just letting yourself feel something real, and that's not a weakness." Livra shook her head, stepping away from him. "I don't know if I can do this. I've spent my entire life building this empire, maintaining control over everything. But now I'm losing myself. I'm starting to care for you, and I don't know what that means for me, for us, for everything I've built." Heart ached for her. He could see the struggle in her eyes, the battle between the woman she wanted to be and the woman she was becoming. But he also saw the pain she was trying to hide. She was afraid to give in to her feelings, afraid of what it would mean if she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "You don't have to be alone in this," Jace said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I'm here. I care about you. And if you want to fight this, we can. But you don't have to do it alone." Livra's eyes searched his face, as if looking for something, anything, to hold on to. She had always been in control, always the one giving orders, always the one others turned to for strength. But with Jace, she was starting to realize that she didn't have to carry the weight of the universe on her shoulders alone. "You're right," she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know what to do with these feelings. I don't know how to be this way, to want someone like you." Jace took a step closer, his eyes softening. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just take it one step at a time. We'll figure it out together." For the first time in a long while, Livra allowed herself to feel the weight of the emotions she had been hiding. She had spent so long keeping everyone at a distance, afraid of what it would mean to care for someone. But now, standing in front of Jace, she realized that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let go, to let herself care. "I don't know if I can let go of my control," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've spent my whole life building this empire, making sure I never show weakness. But with you, I don't feel strong. I feel lost." Jace reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Livra. You don't have to do everything alone. It's okay to feel lost sometimes. It's okay to need someone." The words seemed to hang in the air between them, a lifeline that Livra wasn't sure she could reach for. She had spent so long holding everything together, maintaining control over every aspect of her life. But with Jace, she felt a pull that she couldn't deny. The connection between them was undeniable. She couldn't keep fighting it. For a long moment they stood there silently, simply feeling the weight of the moment. Livra's chest tightened as she realized that she was on the brink of something that could change everything. The fear, the uncertainty, it was all there, swirling around her. But in that moment, she felt something else too. Hope. A tiny spark that she had buried deep inside her, waiting for the right moment to ignite. And as she looked into Jace's eyes, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face it alone. The days that followed felt like a blur. Queen Livra tried to focus on her duties, as she always had. But every moment seemed to pull her back to Jace. Her thoughts were consumed by him, by the way he made her feel, by the connection that had slowly grown between them. She knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. It had become a part of her life, as much as her title, her power, her empire, and yet she couldn't escape the doubt that clung to her heart. She had always been the queen, always the one in control. But now, as she thought about Jace, she realized that she didn't feel in control at all. She felt vulnerable. She had let someone in, someone who made her question everything she had ever believed about herself. One afternoon, as Livra sat in her chambers, looking out at the sprawling city below, she felt a familiar presence enter the room. She turned to see Jace standing in the doorway, his usual calm expression masking the tension she knew was building between them. They hadn't spoken much in the past few days, both caught in their own thoughts, their own fears. But now, standing before her, it was clear that the time had come for them to confront what was happening. "Livra," Jace said softly, his voice breaking the silence. "We need to talk." Livra's heart raced as she looked at him. "I know," she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I've been thinking a lot lately. It's about us, about what's happening between us." Jace stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "And what have you been thinking?" "I don't know," Livra admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can keep going like this. I don't know if I can continue to let myself feel this way. I've spent my whole life in control, always making the hard choices, always keeping my distance from everyone. But with you, it's different, and I'm scared." Jace's gaze softened. He had never seen Livra like this, vulnerable, uncertain. The queen who had conquered so many worlds, who had never shown weakness, was now standing before him, uncertain of what to do next. And in that moment, he realized just how much she had let go to be with him. "You don't have to be afraid, Livra," he said gently. "You don't have to be in control all the time. You don't have to carry the weight of the universe on your shoulders alone. I'm here for you." Livra shook her head, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "But that's the problem, Jace. I've never let anyone close to me. I've never allowed myself to need someone. And now I'm afraid of what that means. I'm afraid of losing everything." Jace reached out, his hand gently brushing her arm. "You're not losing everything, Livra. You're gaining something you've never had before. You're gaining a connection, something real. You don't have to lose yourself in it. You don't have to lose who you are." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "But what if it's too much? What if I can't do this? What if I lose myself completely?" Jace stepped closer, his voice steady. "I'm not asking you to lose yourself. I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us, not alone in this. And if you're afraid, then I'll be here to help you through it. I promise." Livra's heart ached at his words. She had always been so focused on her empire, so focused on maintaining control, that she had forgotten what it meant to be human, to be vulnerable, to need someone. But Jace made her feel like she could take that step. He made her feel like it was okay to care. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can let go of all the walls I've built. I've spent my whole life pushing people away, keeping them at a distance. And now, I don't know if I can let anyone in." Jace reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You don't have to let everything go all at once, Livra. You don't have to be perfect. Just take it one step at a time. And know that I'm right here with you." For a long moment, they stood in silence, their hands touching, their connection stronger than ever. Livra felt the weight of her fear begin to lift, but it was still there, lingering in the back of her mind. She didn't know what the future held, didn't know if she could truly let go of the control that had defined her for so long. But in Jace's eyes, she saw something she had never seen before: acceptance. understanding, and a promise that no matter what happened, she wouldn't be alone. "I want to try," she said softly, her voice filled with both uncertainty and hope. "I want to try to let go, to trust you, to trust this connection between us. But I'm scared. Scared of what it might mean. Scared of what it could cost me." Jace squeezed her hand, his smile gentle and reassuring. "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." Livra nodded, feeling the weight in her chest slowly begin to lift. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone. She had Jace, and maybe that was all she needed to move forward. As the days passed, Queen Livra found herself standing at a crossroads. The emotional journey she had been on with Jace had forced her to confront fears she had buried for centuries. She had spent her entire life building walls around her heart, afraid of what might happen if she allowed herself to feel too much. But now, as she stood on the edge of something real, something deep, she was faced with a choice: to continue down the path of control and isolation, or to finally let go and trust in someone else. Every moment with Jace had been both a revelation and a challenge. She had never allowed herself to be vulnerable, never let anyone in. But with Jace, things were different. He didn't demand her strength or her power. He didn't expect her to be perfect. He simply accepted her, all of her, including the parts of herself she had tried to hide away. But even as she struggled to accept this, she felt the weight of her responsibilities as the ruler of the Viren Empire. She couldn't shake the feeling that letting go of her control, letting herself be vulnerable, might destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. Her empire was built on strength, on fear. If she lost that, if she let herself care too much, would she lose her power as well? The thought terrified her. One evening, as Livra stood by the window of her private chambers, looking out at the vast starry sky, she felt the familiar weight of the crown on her head, a symbol of the life she had chosen. It was a life of solitude, of duty, of sacrifice. But lately, the weight of it all seemed unbearable. The crown felt like a prison. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Without waiting for permission, Jace entered, his calm presence filling the room. He had become her anchor, the one person who could calm her racing thoughts, even if only for a moment. "Livra," Jace said softly, his voice breaking the silence. "You've been distant. What's going on in that mind of yours?" Livra turned to face him, her expression guarded. She had always been the queen, the one who held all the answers, who made all the decisions. But now in his presence, she felt exposed. She wasn't sure how to explain what was happening inside her. She wasn't sure if she even understood it herself. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice soft and filled with uncertainty. "I've been thinking about everything. About us, about my empire, about what it means to be with you." Jace stepped closer, his eyes full of understanding. "I know this isn't easy for you, Livra. You've spent your whole life protecting your heart, keeping it locked away. But you don't have to be afraid anymore. You don't have to face this alone." Livra felt a surge of emotion rise within her. She had never allowed herself to be weak, never allowed herself to lean on anyone. But with Jace, it was different. She felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to rebuild them. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Scared of what it means to let go. Scared that if I care too much, I'll lose everything. My empire, my power, everything I've fought for." Jace reached out, his hand gently touching hers. "Livra, your power doesn't come from the fear you inspire in others. It comes from who you are, from your strength in your heart. You don't have to let go of everything to be with me. You just have to trust that it's okay to let someone in. You're not losing control. You're gaining something real." She looked into his eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the pull between them, the connection that had grown stronger with every passing day. But there was still a part of her that hesitated, that held back. Could she really let go? Could she really trust someone else with her heart? "You've been the queen for so long, Livra," Jace continued. "But you're also human. You deserve to feel love, to feel connected to someone, to not always carry the weight of the universe on your shoulders. Livra swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. "I've spent my whole life building this empire," she said softly. "Don't know who I am without it. I don't know if I can let go of that." "You don't have to let go of who you are," Jace replied gently, "but you can let yourself be happy. You can let yourself feel. And if you do that, you'll only become stronger. You'll still be the queen, Livra, but you'll also be something more. You'll be yourself." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had spent so much of her life focusing on what she had to protect, what she had to control. But in this moment, she realized that maybe the thing she needed most wasn't more power. It was connection, love, and trust. She didn't have to be alone in this. She didn't have to carry the weight of everything on her own. In the days that followed, Livra began to let go, just a little. She allowed herself to be vulnerable with Jace, to lean on him when the weight of her responsibilities became too much. She still held on to her power, still made decisions for her empire, but she started to realize that her heart was not a weakness, it was a strength. And for the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full range of emotions that came with loving someone. She and Jace spent more time together, talking, laughing, sharing their hopes and fears. She began to see him not just as a soldier, but as a partner, someone who understood her in ways no one else ever had. She was no longer afraid to let him in. And as their bond grew stronger, so did her understanding of what it meant to truly be alive. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of her palace, Livra looked out at the stars, her thoughts clear for the first time in weeks. "Not ready to give up my empire," she said softly, "but I'm ready to let go of the fear that holds me back. I'm ready to be with you, Jace." Jace smiled, his heart full of warmth. "I'm right here, Livra, and I'll be with you no matter what." In that moment, Livra finally understood. She didn't have to choose between her empire and her heart. She could have both. And with Jace by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The queen had let go of her fear, and in doing so, she had gained everything she had ever needed.